I wish that we had like better freedom of speech defenders. Like, listen, it's the United States of America. If you want to say you love Hitler, if you want to be anti-Semitic, you should be like allowed to say those things. I don't like it when people get banned for being anti-Semitic and then they say they weren't anti-Semitic, but then they also defend freedom of speech, but they won't say those things. It's ironic because all the people that talk about the Jew stuff are like the people who are the most scared to own the things that they've actually said. Like, it's the United States of America. If you want to be anti-Semitic or anti-Jew, you have the right to say that publicly. Like, there's no law against like saying that publicly. Like, champion that.
Can I
like,
jump in now? My thing was glitching.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I want to answer this. Yeah. So, you're right. We cannot compare loving Hitler to loving Destiny. Destiny is far worse.
I knew you were going to say that.
Category.
I knew you were going to say that. Man, look, let's try to last more than 24 hours today.
Come on, that's a good riff. No, you're right. But, well, here's the thing. I think that, in those cases, in those edge cases, yes, like we do have to permit people to say things that even everybody disagrees with. We have to permit people to say things that anybody would say, oh, of course you shouldn't be able to say that. That's where it matters. The limits of free speech, that's where it becomes tested. We don't have free speech so that people can say, I like Burger King instead of Wendy's. No, we have free speech so that people can say things that are outrageous and question fundamental assumptions, like about Hitler, like about certain political myths or, how our political system is founded. And so when Destiny says, oh, you don't own what you say, it's not about that. It's just about if you are able to discern the tone when someone is talking or what the meaning is. You look at a lot of the things I say, a statement like that is obviously said in a tongue-in-cheek. It's punchy, it's outrageous, it's intended to be. That's the obvious purpose. And all of a sudden when somebody who is like, and by the way, I should point out, while we're playing this game about, you said this, you said that, when I say something like what I don't want to get banned, but when I say something like what I said a year ago that got me rebanned after I was reinstated, everybody looks at that and not rightly, they rightly say it's outrageous, but there's a complete context denial. People hear that statement and they go, he said what? Ban. Because I'm a right-wing guy and I have all these views and I'm like a canceled American. He's got to go. Hang on. I'm making an important point. When Destiny says, I think that the Palestinians should be genocided. Ha ha ha. Nobody looks at that and says, oh, he should be canceled. What an outrageous thing to say. Some people do, but he's on YouTube. He hangs out with Shapiro, Jordan Peterson. When I say something because I'm right-wing and it's outrageous, there's no charity. People pretend like they don't know what humor is. People pretend they don't know what rhetoric is. That's just who he is. He's an odious person. Get him out of here. And same goes for everyone here. Same thing happened to Tate. Similar things have happened to Elon. It's happened to Alex Jones. When left-wing people do or say things that are just as bad, just as racist or just as violent or whatever, it's always with them, oh, well, I'm sure he was joking. Hassan Piker can say, we deserve 9/11. As far as I know, he's still on Twitch. I'm not. But what is materially different from saying America deserved 9/11? 3,000 souls innocent were killed. We deserve that. That's a fine statement. You're on Twitch and Twitter and there's no censorship. When Destiny says, I think Palestinians should be genocided. Ha ha ha. He's still on YouTube. He's still on all these platforms. Nobody even thinks twice. When Nick Fuentes makes a joke, hang on, when I say something like, whatever I said, I don't want to say it again because I don't want to get banned. Oh, well, he's a horrible person. He's an avowed neo-Nazi. Look at what, they're going to reprint the quote like Ed Krasenstein did without the laughing or the tone. And that's BS. Like, let's just be honest. Everyone can recognize what's going on there.
So let me, Destiny, hold on, guys.
Nick, just a quick question. Just on that specific point.
Before that point, Sully, just because there was something mentioned, it's an important sensitive thing. So, Destiny, on the joke that Nick, and obviously it's a joke that many will find insensitive, offending, etc. On the joke of you being a more despicable person, I think he said, than Hitler. Now, I think he meant it as a joke. Do you think such jokes, Destiny, you said that Nick is on your blacklist. Do you think such jokes should be censored or they should be allowed? What's your position on that, Destiny?
If you're talking legally, I think you should be allowed to joke about whatever you want to joke about. But again, like, the problem again is like the advocates for freedom of speech are so like fucking boring and dishonest. Like, Fuentes is not banned for telling jokes. Fuentes is banned because he jokes about things he actually believes, right? The difference between like me and Fuentes is if you ask me, Destiny, do you think all the Palestinians should be genocided? I mean, if you listen to the rest of that clip, I go, man, it's like a really fucked situation. I don't know how it's going to end. It seems like there's no way out. Like, that's my answer. If you ask Nick, do you really think that like Jews run 70% of the world and the white white race is being bred out of existence by mass immigration that's facilitated by secret Jewish financiers who also control all of our foreign policy and make us allegiant to Israel, and they've done this for thousands of years, and that's why they're kicked out of every single. He'd be like, well, yeah, and also, 6 million cookies, right? Like, the difference is Nick isn't joking.
No, but Destiny, Destiny, quick question. No, but Destiny, like, do you not agree that a person can ask a question? So they can believe in a certain ideological position and then ask a question that people would find harmful, or find it emotionally hurting. As an example, you said you're anti-Islam or you're Islamophobic, and then you make jokes about it. So you can clearly have a position and yet make jokes about it, right?
Well, yeah, no. But if you were to ask me, Destiny, why do you make jokes against Islam? I wouldn't be a pussy and say, oh, bro, I'm just joking. I would say, because I don't like Islam. I really don't. I hate the religion. Like, I would be honest about it. I'm not going to say to him, like, oh, no,
yeah, but let me ask Nick. And this is the thing. So why is and this is the real question people are asking, like, why is Destiny able to make those comments and someone like Nick gets banned? So Nick, same question to you. Your position in terms of whether you believe that certain people run the world or whatever it is, I mean, have you hid from that position? Like, that's his argument.
Absolutely not. No, but here's the difference. People are not saying, oh, you believe that Jews have disproportionate influence in media. I don't think anyone would even disagree with that. I don't even think Jews would disagree with that. Also, it's an empirical question. So people, if they're interested, can go and look it up. It's actually not a completely subjective question. It's actually quite objective. But that's not what people accuse me of. And that's like a very slippery way to frame it. When Destiny says they should be genocided, so of course I don't believe they should be genocided. Okay, fair enough. People watch my speech from a year ago or 2 years ago, and they say, oh, he wants to kill all people that aren't like him. In the same speech, I say, we love everyone. We love even our enemies. We need to pray for them. We need mercy and compassion towards them. We don't need cruelty. I think even in that same speech, not even about Jewish people or Israel, in that same speech, I said, when I look at homosexuals and transsexuals, I don't like all the cruelty visited upon them. We need to pray for them. We need to bring them into the church, blah, blah, blah. So it's like the same speech where people say, oh, Nick said he wants to kill everyone and all of his opponents. I'm literally as Destiny said with his comments about genociding Palestinians, if you look at the full context, it's completely misrepresented. The difference is the ADL and the SPLC aren't clipping Destiny's joke and throwing it on social media every time he makes a post. The difference is when an article is written about Destiny, there isn't a preamble that says Destiny, a live streamer who said Palestinians should be genocided, but they do that for me. Every unfortunate thing, joke, exaggeration, whatever you want to call it, always with the most uncharitable interpretation, that is on my Wikipedia. That is the preamble of every article written about me. And I'm not going to hide behind my real views. Okay.
Are you saying that all of that was taken out of context?
Saying that we're going to kill everybody or whatever? Yeah, it absolutely is taken out of context. I mean, we have to give me a specific example.
How many Jews do you think died in the Holocaust? Well, there's a specific. How many Jews died in the Holocaust?
So Nick, just a quick question, right? When you've explained the disparity in terms of the rules, like basically Destiny can attack Islam, Muslims, and he's got no problems, and you have been banned. Now, the question becomes, when you know that that's the level of Sophia that we live in, that there is this disparity, do you then, like, now you made a joke, didn't you, right? And it was clearly a joke, but now that could be snipped and that could maybe be used to get you banned or whatever it may be. So does that make you become, does that make you become, well, obviously it hasn't, but should it then make you become a lot more careful in even the jokes you make?
No, absolutely not. Because what I have learned, because I've been doing this for a little while now, longer than many people, what I've learned is it doesn't matter actually what you say or how carefully you say it. Keith Woods is on here. He just jumped on the space. This is a guy who, I mean, me and my followers, it's like an inside joke that his streams are they don't have any rhetoric. They don't have there's no jokes. It's very dry. It's all philosophy. This guy is like the most controlled, disciplined, and by controlled, I mean he has self-control, not like controlled op. I mean he's self-controlled, restrained, disciplined. And even when he got popular last year for the ban, he started the Ban the ADL campaign, hashtag. They dug up like a tweet from 2 years prior where he said something like sarcastically, oh, I guess I'm a raging anti-Semite because blah, blah, blah. The ADL cut that, and now every time there's an article about Keith Woods, it says self-avowed raging anti-Semite. One tweet from years ago said in an obviously, I mean, Keith knows the details, so he can reproduce the tweet, but it was so obviously, he wasn't saying, hey, it was obviously rhetorical, it's obviously sarcastic. So it doesn't matter. All the videos, all these dry videos about Platonism and, video essays and articles about birth rates in a very measured academic way. He said one thing sarcastic one time. They dug in, found it. Some researcher reproduced it. Now he forever will be known as the self-avowed raging anti-Semite. So I've seen many things like that. So the question is, do you self-censor and impose a chilling effect? And, we can't be funny. We can't make jokes. We can't be rhetorical. We have to kind of go through this translator and be, as Tate said at the beginning, you neuter yourself. They want you neutered with the chilling effect from these free speech regulations. Or do you just kind of go out? I feel like I have filled up the room with such a cacophony. Like there's just like this ambient perception of me as this like vaguely horrible person. Now I can say whatever I want. Now I can say whatever. And, and I think people can recognize if they watch my show. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot and then get Destiny's thoughts. I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Sure.
And I'm pretty confident you will not get banned answering that question, but what is the most controversial belief that you currently hold? And the mic is yours. It doesn't matter how controversial it is, because then my next question for Destiny and anyone else would be, should that belief be censored? Should the ability to speak about that belief be censored? Nick, the mic is yours.
Okay. Well, I would say the biggest taboo right now is talking about Jewish people, because I talk about race and I talk about gender and a lot of things. And the biggest taboo is, as we all know, talking about Jewish people's influence, and they could be right wing or left wing. I think, though, it seems like the influence of Israel is maybe the biggest one, because even conservatives talk about George Soros. So I would say it's Jewish influence. And my answer for that is I think that only Christians should be in power in America. And I don't know the details of how you'd work that out in terms of if you pass a law or there's a qualification, but I think that we should have all Christian legislators and Christian presidents and Christian Supreme Court judges. So I would say that's probably my most controversial.
I'd say taboo number one. We've discussed this point in previous spaces. I want to ask you, and Keith, I'm going to go to you in a second, but give me one more, Nicholas, and then we'll go Nick, and then we'll go to Destiny afterwards. The second taboo thing, and I've got a quote here about. I'm going to read out a quote. Could be out of context. Maybe it could be the second one when you said it could be a joke as well. We need to go back to burning women alive more. Again, if I took it out of context, I do apologize. But can you maybe elaborate that quote? And could that be the second most taboo belief that you hold? Which I'd be surprised if you actually hold that belief.
I see your co-host thumbs down that one. I wonder, she didn't like that I said I want to burn women alive. That's obviously a joke. And if you look at the whole context of that clip, I said in a very deadpan way, I'm like, women are casting spells and they're becoming witches. In the Middle Ages, they used to throw them in the river. They used to burn them alive. I'm like, and here they are lying on the stand about, I think in that case it was Johnny Depp. I'm like, they're lying about Johnny Depp casting spells. I'm like, we got to burn these women alive. Obviously a joke.
Oh, okay. I'd put that I'd put that in an extremely bad joke, but yes.
Can I ask Nick a question real quick?
Your reaction is what makes it funny.
I would stand as tribute for you to burn me at the stake, but you'd have to be tied to me.
What would be, before Ed and Keith, just 2 seconds. So Nick, what would be the second most taboo belief that you hold? And I want Destiny's thoughts on either of these, whether they should be censored. And I'll ask Ed the same question and then Keith.
Probably my other one is that race is real. I'm a race realist. I think that there's genetic differences between the races as opposed to everything being environmental. And those are broad categories of talking about Jewish people, talking about biological diversity, human biological diversity. That's what people would say is the dissident right. Those are like the two biggest taboo things they believe. And then so for me, I guess those would probably be the big two.
So Destiny, these are two beliefs and I'm guessing you disagree with. So should Nick have the right to speak about those two topics on any social media platform, not just X?
Personally, I think that if you're large enough of a social media platform and you're hosting political conversations, I think almost any any kind of mainstreamish, like if more than 1% of people believe in it, there should probably be conversation happening about it. So I would say that everything he's brought up, yeah, you should be able to talk about on most mainstream, like social media platforms, assuming political conversations happen here, right? Like if you've got like a social media website for, people talking about, their cats and dogs, then I can understand banning the speech there. But for places like Facebook or X, Twitter, like I can understand people wanting to have those conversations here, and you should be able to. But again, I would like to repeat the same thing I've said a million times. It is so boring that nobody will actually present what it is they actually believe. I don't know if it's strategy or I don't know if it's cowardice, but like
what is it do you think that I'm hiding? I mean, just
you just said two things
up.
that are objectively true that everybody believes in. Like Jews have a disproportionate.
So what am I hiding?
Jewish people have a
What am I hiding?
I can finish speaking. I can, say it.
Well, I can give a reason why people would hide their beliefs on that. I can give a reason why people would hide their beliefs on that. I mean, Destiny.
Wait. If you want to hide your beliefs, that's fine. But then say that. Be like, yo, I'm not going to say what I actually believe because I'm not.
Yeah, but you're muddying the waters because
I can't say it. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't.
Go ahead and say it.
I can't. Okay.
Go ahead right now.
Say a minute ago that the Jewish thing was a myth and that like Jewish people don't have a disproportionate amount of power in the media. And now you're saying it's an objectively true thing.
It's two things, okay? One, Jews obviously have a disproportionate amount, and far more than the media, probably politically.
I'm not hearing what I'm hiding. I'm not hearing what I'm hiding. You made that accusation 3 times. I'm not hearing an example.
Can I finish a sentence? I know you're excited.
Yeah, answer the question. I'm
trying to, but you cut me off like every.
No, you're not. You're going in another direction. Name one specific example because you said it now like 5 times. Yeah, oh, you're hiding.
I'm going to have to repeat this. I'm trying to get my answer.
Say it.
Eventually, you'll let me do it. I know you're excited.
Let's hear it. Say the example then.
Yes. So the idea that Jews disproportionately represent some part of like the power structures is not the controversial nor the strong claim. That is an objectively true claim that everyone can see. The strong claim is the idea that there is a secret cabal of Jewish people that are working to undermine other races across the world that are coordinating and working through all of those structures of power. That's the controversial belief. That's the thing that you believe in and you preach. But then you come onto these platforms and you give the weak take of like, don't you think that like most of the peoples in charge are like kind of more Jewish than like they really should be? Or the same thing with like the race and IQ thing. Like everybody who's reasonable to anything should acknowledge that there's going to be genetic differences, probably even genetic differences between groups of people. But that's not your claim. Your claim is black people are dumber due to genetic reasons on whole versus white people. Like that's the strong claim. You make the weak claim that is like everybody believes in it, but then like the strong claim goes unsaid, and that's usually what people are upset about. Which you can argue.
Yeah, okay. So let me
own up, like man up and own your positions. Don't like say the most milquetoast, like obviously true things ever, and leave all the controversy, behind you. That's weak.
Yeah, see, the difference is that when you say these things, you're rephrasing them in the liberal perception way. You say, well, if you believe in race realism, that means you believe black people are dumb. No, if you believe in human biodiversity, you believe that there are genetic differences between people. IQ is a heritable trait, and blacks have a lower average IQ, on average, than white people. That's also a statistical fact. That's also true in SAT scores. It's also true in IQ tests globally and in America. I've never hid from that. I said that in front of a crowd of black people at Iowa State. I said that in front of Myron. Hang on, and Myron is here. I said that in front of a panel of all black women on Fresh and Fit.
That's a fact.
Because you're just reframing what I'm saying.
I'm not reframing it. You're saying
that if someone believes in genetic differences, then that means that you believe black people are dumb.
No,
and if you say that Jewish people influence society, you believe in a shadowy cabal where they're like evil wizards and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
so it's like, of course I'm not going to say the caricature and the reframing that you're giving it because you disagree. You don't like that people find it persuasive. That's why you put me on a blacklist and said, I will never stream a Nick Fuentes. But
because
then,
you're not saying anything controversial.
Then you got to show up to derail and disrupt and say, all the persuasive stuff. Well, he's just lying. There's secret evil views that he has that, you just aren't hearing right now. So that's why you're going to break your one rule. You come on the podcast, even though you quote unquote.
I know you're obsessed with comic book villains.
Because as you said, I do like that movie. Because as you said a couple of years ago, you don't like when people like me talk to a large audience. I mean, you're the one that's hiding a political
7 people
agenda.
DM me to come here, okay? So I decided to come and hang out.
That's weird.
My career was over. Real quick reframing.
Hold on. Just Ed and Keith, I want to ask you both the same questions. Like seeing that back and forth between Nick and Destiny. Is there anything in that back and forth that should have been censored? Is there anything that could have, that could be considered hate speech or could have led to violence and should not be allowed on X or any other platform?
Look, I think it should be up to the platform itself. If a platform wants to censor certain types of hate speech or certain types of incitement of violence, I think they should be able to do that.
Even despite, sorry to interrupt you, Ed, but despite the amount of influence they have now compared to 10, 20 years ago, like if you give them that right now and they all just meet in one room, they can essentially control speech around the world.
Yeah, but I think that's their right as a corporation. I don't,
Ed, what's the platform's primary objective?
The platforms, what platform are you referring to?
All of them. Why do social media companies exist? What's their primary objective?
To make money.
To make money. And you're saying that they should be allowed to ban certain speech they don't like if that allows them to make more money, correct?
I believe, as in capitalism, I believe that's the way it should be.
So if Pfizer came along and decided to give a bunch of money to one of these social media platforms, would they allow anti-COVID vaccine conversations and speech or vaccine injury proof on their platform, or would they censor it to make as much money as possible?
I think it's up to them as a corporation to do as they please. Just like Donald Trump with Truth Social has censored liberals from his site.
That's fine. But we're talking about people.
I think Elon Musk has the absolute right to run it the way he wants to do it.
That's fine.
And under his terms, that is, as long as something doesn't break the law, and I guess that can be, subjective to some, like what's going on in Brazil. I think that's his right. And I think, if that's the best way to run it, that his platform will probably succeed.
Cool. So vaccine, I understand what you're saying. So vaccine injuries do exist. However, the platform's objective is to make as much money as possible, and Pfizer is funding the platform. So they're going to pretend vaccine injuries do not exist. So they are purporting a false version of reality. They are creating and aiding the matrix and making people believe a version of reality that is not true, primarily for financial profit. And those with the global centralized capital can control narratives and can control the world even at a better level than most political parties. Would you agree with that?
Unmute,
wait, Pfizer is not even worth that much money. Why would we assume Pfizer can control speech on...
It's an example, Destiny.
Yeah, see, so you keep blaming it on the advertiser or a company that's paying these companies. It's up to the media companies, it's up to their shareholders, what's in the best interest of those companies. That's how capitalism works in America. That's what I think most conservatives embrace. They embrace capitalism. Let the companies make up their own mind. If one business idea is not going to work out, if people don't like that, they're going to move to another platform. And we're seeing that with a lot of people who are moving away from Facebook and onto X because they don't like this level of censorship they're getting on other platforms. So they move to X. Just like the media. Understood. You can watch Fox News. You can watch News Nation. You can watch, there's a plethora of different media outlets that you can consume if you don't like what one media outlet's putting out there. It's not the government saying, oh, the media can't talk about the Pfizer vaccine or say that it has side effects. If that would be an infringement on the First Amendment. But in capitalistic society, these companies can run the way they want without government interference. So if the government starts interfering and saying you can't run your platform how you want, then that's going to be the government interference, and that's going to be against the First Amendment.
Okay, well, that's another argument because there was Twitter files and there's a whole lot
and the Twitter files also. The Twitter files showed that a lot of stuff went on. People requested a lot of things to be removed, and Twitter, being a publicly run company, publicly held company, they made up their mind on what they believed was best for their shareholders.
Let me simplify the question. Do you believe so what you're effectively saying, we agree on the fact that those with the money can control certain narratives and how they're perceived and discussed. Would you agree with that?
Those with money definitely have more control, yes.
Yes, and they can control on a public forum how certain things are perceived and discussed because they have the money. And when I say advertise, what I truthfully mean is donate and lobby. That's what they do. They donate and lobby to platforms to get their point of view across.
Yeah, of course, on certain platforms they can, but on certain platforms they can't. Like, let's say X, for example.
Well, absolutely, because it's free speech. So this is where we're going back into I'm only going back over this because we talked about it earlier when you guys were saying the primary objective of the media is to make money.
That is the primary objective. There's really no arguing that.
Okay, well, if that's their case, then they're going to take money from the large centralized power structures and they're going to purport any false version of reality that it takes them to make as much money as possible, and the people who donated the money to make as much money as possible. Objective truth has nothing to do with it.
If that's in the best interest of the shareholders, perhaps. I'd like to think that shareholders have an ethical side of things too, and if they see that happening, they're not going to be as interested in investing in that company. So, I think the board of directors and the shareholders are going to have the ultimate say there, and I don't think Most people want that.
But do you think you were censored for money?
I didn't hear you.
Do you think your account, you and Brian's accounts, were banned for monetary purposes? Did they make more money by banning you guys?
No.
Do you think that contradicts the point?
Our accounts were banned.
They broke the rules, didn't they?
They thought we were. They thought purchased their accounts, which we didn't.
No, sorry. What I meant was they thought you did. It wasn't because you had like an impact on society, and that's the reason they wanted to ban you, right?
They banned me. Yeah, they banned our accounts because they thought we were breaking their terms of service. But I would add that was a business decision that they thought would help the business. So
do you think Andrew? Sorry, Brian. I thought it was Ed. Brian, do you think Andrew Tate or Nick Fuentes, they were banned because the platforms wanted to make more money? Because Stripe wanted to make more money, they banned them.
Yeah, I do. I think that they saw them as somebody hampering advertising.
And do you think this model is flawed, where advertisers
hampering their image? I think hampering their image, which hampers their revenue, right?
That's just an alibi.
Let me ask a simpler question. So you're saying effectively that mainstream media will lie for money, correct?
Well, I mean, if you lie as a mainstream media outlet and you're caught in that lie, it's going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your revenue.
That's not what I asked. I'm asking, do you if I use Pfizer because it's the example we used earlier before Destiny has a breakdown. If Pfizer come along and they are sponsoring, donating, advertising, lobbying, whatever you want to call it, X amount of hundreds of millions of dollars to your news network, and you're talking pro-vaccine, would the mainstream media lie for money?
I mean, I think that depends on the individual who's making that decision. But I mean, if I was running the mainstream media, I certainly wouldn't. I mean, I think you have a reputation. If you get caught in a lie, that's going to hurt you monetarily in the long run. It's going to hurt you from a standpoint
that would be true unless your primary objective was to spread lies and for you to be paid to spread lies. And as long as you spread the lies, you continue to get paid because nobody buys what you sell anyway.
Well, I don't think none of these companies have the money to solo fund like an entire social media platform. Like, I feel like the analysis stops with, if somebody pays you $100 to lie, will you do it? The answer is yes, but everybody that's a large creator on this platform knows that if you got paid $100 to lie, you wouldn't take it because if people found out you were lying, your losses would be way more than the little bit of money you'd get paid to do the lie.
That's crazy. People pay you, man. We're talking billions. Your marriage not exploding.
Kind of like, Nick, how you lie about everything they do. So, for instance, we were talking about deplatforming, and Nick is talking about the blacklist that we're on. The only reason Nick, by the way, is
back to what Andrew was saying.
Guys, 2 seconds.
Scam reporting people. That's the only reason.
Andrew, but the what you said is that I think the media will lie for money. I think you're right there, and I think Ed cannot disagree. But then, isn't that going to be their downfall? Like, this is not sustainable either, because they eventually lose trust.
This is the missing element. They will lie for money, and then we're talking about how that's going to damage their reputation, which has happened. Nobody trusts them. Nobody believes them anymore. And everyone's missing the very obvious point that it's their job to lie for money. They've always lied for money. They'll tell any narrative they're told to tell by the big money and the big finance.
No, but who are they?
Who are they? To lie for money.
Andrew,
why would they?
Like, can you name an individual? Is it the CEO of CNN? Is it, like who is?
It's global. It's going to change, right? The COVID-19 narrative is different than the Ukraine narrative. Perhaps they're all on the same.
Yeah, but you can't paint everybody. Maybe Andrew. I'm sure there's some people who would lie for money. I'm sure there's some people who would lie for money. You're right, but to say that the mainstream media would lie for money, like everybody in the mainstream media, their goal is to lie for money, just to put money in their pockets, and they're willing to tell lies. That's ridiculous. I mean, you're judging every individual person.
It's not ridiculous.
No,
it's
absolutely ridiculous.
How about if they promote vaccine misinformation? People were all losing their jobs if they were to promote anti-vaccine content or anti-vaccine misinformation, which has direct harm to the people that are getting these injuries. Like, we're talking about a misinformation that has direct harm to humans. And Andrew's bringing up a point where if they lie for money when Pfizer is paying them, which they did during COVID, and then they're not reporting on vaccine injuries, then this is a lie that has direct harm to humans.
Are we saying should those be banned? Should that be made illegal? If you lie and you get paid money for it, should that be like a free speech thing where you're in trouble for that?
Well, here's the pertinent point, though. I feel like we're missing, guys. I feel like we're missing a very pertinent point. The only reason mainstream media exists at all is to lie. I don't know why we're trying to pretend that's not the case. The reason it
I think
exists
that's a
and it's
ridiculous
pumped out
statement.
free everywhere all of the time and forced on everyone's throat all of the time in every single lobby everywhere is to lie. They get their objectives that they're supposed to purport to the populace. Their job is to lie. And to sit and say, well, if they lie, they won't be trusted. Correct. Nobody trusts them. Correct. They've been lying for money all this time. That's exactly where we are. So how is this confusing for anybody?
When does a media outlet become the mainstream media or part of the mainstream media? At what point?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, you have state broadcasters for a lot of countries, and I'm sure that in each different country, you have their state broadcaster with their particular narrative they want to push and enforce. I'm sure the Chinese state broadcaster and the Russian state broadcaster and the British state broadcaster will look at the same series of events with a completely different spin and a completely different narrative that they'll try and push to the populace, which they think is best in their national interest, which means it comes from above. It's not organic. It's not just accidental. They put together the narratives they're told to, and they push it to the population. They're professional liars.
Yeah, but don't you think that every media outlet wants to reach that point of being considered the mainstream media because that means they're the biggest media in the country? So at a certain point, you become part of the mainstream. At a certain point, you become part of the mainstream media, right? So at that point, do you just start lying? I mean, it's a ridiculous narrative. Sure,
what's ridiculous to say that there's like a free market for media. There's 5 major conglomerates that own most of the media. So to pretend this idea of like, well, they're rising and falling and they're in competition. There's like 5 major
they rise and fall.
They control most of the media. And yeah, there is some, within margin, but nobody would ever say that like some tiny publication that could be founded by an individual is going to blow up and compete with the big 5 conglomerates like News Corp and 21st Century Fox and Disney. So it's just,
and they wouldn't let it. Guys, let's be hyper realistic here. I said earlier about the control of people and influence over people is the only true war. Tanks and bullets are the final last resort to do that. It's much easier to use social media and narrative control and the MSM, et cetera, to control a populace as opposed to putting them all at gunpoint. The idea that you can just stand up and tell the truth and you're going to have a broadcasting organization inside of the UK bigger than the BBC and you're just going to talk against the government and you're just going to tell the truth and be Mr. Honest and they're going to let you get bigger than the BBC without catching a fucking bullet is asinine. Look at what's happening to people who have Twitter accounts. Not just my story, Nick's story, Alex Jones' story. There's a bunch of people with Twitter accounts who end up in a cell for having a Twitter account, let alone a broadcasting corp. To sit and believe that, who becomes the mainstream and you can just go and make a news channel and maybe you'll get in. It's one big club and you're not in it.
So Andrew, you haven't answered my question before. So when you say they, the mainstream media, are you talking about, let's say, Chris Cuomo? When he was on CNN, are you talking like is he being fed this information that he's only allowed?
Well, I'll be honest. I'll be very honest with you. What I think of mainstream news broadcasters, I think they're idiots who are dragged from obscurity and they sit down in front of a teleprompter. And I think anybody can do their job. And Don Lemon's monumental failure has proved that perfectly because since he left CNN, nobody's given a shit. I think he has 500 views on any of his videos. He's some random idiot they plucked from obscurity, sat him down, he read the teleprompter. It's not about who reads the teleprompter, sir. It's about who decides what's on the teleprompter in the first place. That's the actual discussion we're having here. It's nothing to do with which jackass could sell his soul and sit down and read
so many of those shows that individual, whoever has that show, they have their team, and they're not necessarily being fed everything they have to say. They're allowed to have opinions themselves. See, this is
my friend, and I call you my friend.
I'm glad you're calling me your friend.
By the fact I'm about to call you an idiot because you're an idiot, sir.
Tucker Carlson said the exact same thing, that he had basically full editorial privileges.
Didn't Tucker get fired for having an opinion that went outside of the narrative?
No, Tucker got fired because he almost cost Fox News $1 billion for lying on air. It's funny that you defend the fact that he had an original opinion. What you're actually defending is misinformation and lies, which is supposed to be something you guys are against, I thought.
Which opinion was this? That's not what I heard. Tell me, please.
The Fox News, the Dominion lawsuit. There were texts that were leaked from him where he admitted that he was lying on air about claims that Sidney Powell had made to him, and he was tired of lying to his audience about things about the Dominion voting machines being rigged.
Well, I don't know. That's
you don't know anything. You don't read media. That's why you're out here saying things like they get marching orders from everybody. You don't know how any of these media companies are structured. You don't know where the teams get their information from. People that work in media are the most like social media hungry people in the universe. You think that all these people in all these networks across all these countries are getting fed the same marching orders and nobody's leaked anything, nobody's complained about anything, nobody's said anything? And why do we think that mainstream media is any more insulated from these problems than alternative media is? You guys will make fun of the marching orders from mainstream media, but I bet every single alternative media guy in here is anti-vax, thinks COVID came from a bioweapons lab, thinks that Russia has a right to invade Ukraine, thinks that all the charges against Donald Trump are made up, thinks that we shouldn't be supporting Israel. Like, you guys have literally copy-pasted the same opinions between every single one of you, and you guys are talking like an army of NPCs about how the mainstream media gives you like fabricated opinions. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Yes, we do all think the truth. That is
crazy how the perspective there, huh? Secondly, but when you all think the same thing, it's not a conspiracy, but when the mainstream media does, it is a conspiracy. Crazy how that works.
Points of view. I just said that different state-sponsored broadcasters would have conflicting.
But they don't. Do you watch any media? Have you followed any media? They don't.
Of course, if you watch
when you're reporting on international media, the stories are more or less the same.
Segment and a BBC segment, they often directly conflict.
No, very rarely. On the facts, no. Maybe if you're watching a pundit or you're reading op-eds, they will. But if you have any amount of media literacy, a really great example that works against your Israel stuff, by the way, was the reporting of that Al-Alassi hospital bombing, where everybody was saying that Israel bombed that parking lot. Every single mainstream media outlet in the world ran with that story for 2 days. I mean, how did that work if Israel controls the media? Or how does that work if they all give conflicting accounts of reports? It's because they don't. It's because everybody relies on people that are reporting on the ground. It goes through their media teams. They publish what they think is right. Sometimes people fuck up. There doesn't have to be a top-down conspiracy to explain why.
They changed the headlines very quickly, Destiny.
After more information came out. Yes, sir. That's how it works.
When fake news came out.
This is so naive. There have been so many lies specifically about wars. It's insane that you would even bring that up. Before the 2020 election, there was a big story about how Russians were putting a bounty on the head of American soldiers in Iraq. You remember this? And they said Trump is allying with Russia, who's killing our soldiers. Then a year after, and by the way, that's after the election, they came out and said, yeah, that wasn't true. They came out and said, well, we source our intelligence on the ground. Some of it has a high degree of confidence and some of it has a low degree. And this one had no degree of confidence. But it took them a year to correct it after it had already served its purpose. Same thing with the Hunter Biden laptop. They totally put the lid on that one because they said, we were told it's Russian disinformation. Turned out to be authentic after the election. Just like the 40 beheaded babies. 40 beheaded babies! 40 babies and their heads are off. I can't believe it. And then they found out in December, after Israel had already invaded, after they blockaded Gaza, after everything, they said, oh yeah, that was all fabricated. It's a complete lie. Same thing with Ukraine. I remember when we debated, they said Russia blew up a nuclear reactor because they're trying to do another Chernobyl. Turned out that was bullshit. So those are just like off the top of my head. 5 examples about 3 different conflicts where, they report it. It serves its purpose, and then they revise it a year later after they got what they wanted. And you, because you believe their alibi, because you don't understand the distinction between power and powerless, between government and people, you say, no, I think they got more information. They found out that the propaganda that they created for their efficient purpose, they found out that was a lie because, these are just really earnest people like you and I trying to get it right, as opposed to very interested parties in government, finance, wherever you find it. So those are just a few examples off the top of my head. They learn more information, just like in Iraq, right?
People
they
just
learned there were no weapons of mass
destruction in Iraq. It's possible because it happened on the other side too. How many people were saying, there's no way that Russia's going to invade Ukraine. That's bullshit. The U.S. intelligence must be lying because Nick said that they lie about the intel all the time. Well, guess what? That happened. There are no fighters in Al-Shifa hospital. That can't possibly be the case. Whoops, we found CCTV footage that shows otherwise. No, hydroxychloroquine is a way better drug than remdesivir. This is going to be the ivermectin is going to save all of us. Looks like none of that was true. People get things wrong. Some people lie. You have to be intelligent enough to call out fault. That wasn't even a syllogism.
That's a false syllogism.
No, yes, it is. Even a syllogism, dipshit. Listen, people get things wrong sometimes. You have to be more intelligent. You gotta be more sophisticated when you go through media. You have to understand sometimes people fuck up and they get shit wrong. Sometimes people do lie. But why the fuck would you trust people who in alternative media who are like teams of 1 to 4 highly ideologically driven data-driven people versus entire media conglomerates that are being fact-checked or have like, dozens or sometimes hundreds of workers in some of these offices. Like the ability for you to
lie about
is going to be way higher.
How much do you know about the CIA's history of influencing media?
Because amazing question. I don't know. How much do you know about?
I often don't hear people like you and Ed and Brian digging into the history of the national intelligence state directly influencing media. Like through history. I don't mean necessarily today.
History is different. Like if you want to talk about US foreign policy between like the 40s and before the, the fall of the Soviet Union, that's going to be a different type of foreign policy, a different approach than our foreign policy over the past like 34 years. Also, the ability to sneak or hide different things is going to be different when everybody is carrying around a video camera and a recorder. Like the ability to do things covertly is a lot easier back in the day when people were typewriting to each other or
like the Hunter Biden laptop.
I have to go. So I want to ask.
Yeah, do your thing, Andrew.
Sorry, brother. I have to go. So I just want to ask a really quick question. Destiny, I want to understand your worldview because you and I have a different worldview, it seems, especially on girlfriends, etc. But we won't go down that path. Do you think it would be prudent and professional for a country to allow its state broadcaster, which speaks to its populace, to report whatever it wanted and whatever it discovered, without any kind of moderation or input, even if it was directly adverse to the goals and aims of the national security of said country or the military-industrial complex of that country? Do you think they would allow the state broadcaster to just report whatever it wanted fairly without anyone telling them what to say or any narratives to hold, even if it's directly counter to the interests of very powerful entities within that nation? Do you believe that we operate in a world that fair?
Because
do you think that would be prudent and professional?
Because confidence is a valuable thing. And if your country doesn't trust you, doesn't trust the media, if it doesn't trust the leaders, and if you've got ways to hold them accountable, like via voting, then yeah, if you fuck around with your population and people find out, you're going to be held accountable for it. Arguably, that's why Trump won his election. You can say that like, oh, well, the media lies to everybody and everybody lies to everybody. That might be true. Fine. Then why the fuck should we believe anything any of you guys say, right? At that point, you're in an epistemic, nihilistic black hole of nothingness where you can't believe anybody.
The fact that you believe a country X, will have military aims, it will have agricultural aims, it will have political ambitions, it will have trade aims, whatever they are, to compete in this globalized market, and they need their population to believe a certain point of view to be as competitive as possible against the other nations, and they're just going to allow their state broadcaster to broadcast whatever they want, even if it's counter to their own narratives and interests, is so ridiculously naive. That's not
it's
what
not
happened.
naive. You don't even understand how markets work.
Let me just finish because I'm about to drive. I'm about to drive, my friend.
That companies with a market cap of $100 billion have more say in our
The Daily Mail starts talking about war with Russia in the UK only a fucking couple months ago. Endless war with Russia, conscription, how it needs to happen. On a dime, all of the BBC, all of the British news starts talking about how important it is to go to war with Russia because that's the aim that they had from their military industrial complex. And the broadcaster and the media arm of the government works directly with their foreign policy aims. It's all directly going together. Not a single newspaper printed, "This is dumb shit. Nobody should go to get their ass whooped by the Russians." Not a single one, because they are not allowed to.
If that's the case, then why didn't Trump shut down all negative media about him when he was president? If that's the case, why didn't Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Barack Obama shut down all negative media about them? You guys bring up the best counterexample to you is that Hunter Biden laptop story. Why did that get censored for one day? Why wasn't that story completely killed?
Oh yeah, that wasn't heavily suppressed.
Why wasn't that story killed completely? That is the most talked about story. Your example of media censorship is like the most talked about story in the past 10 years of online media.
It's talked about online on social media, yes, but it was suppressed in the MSM. Which
it was suppressed on Twitter.
You're right.
No,
the New York Post
in every story by doing what Nick says.
The big deal about Twitter the big deal about the New York Post story was it being suppressed on Twitter and Facebook, but it came back in like a day. So the question is, if the government able to control things so well, why didn't they shut that story down completely?
Destiny, let me ask you a question on that. Isn't that because they censored it because there was a specific reason to do so? Because the reason you censor it is because you want the election to go in a certain way. Once the election's over...
Didn't the intel agencies tell them to do that? Didn't the intel agencies tell them to suppress that?
If you actually read the Twitter files, I know how much you hate reading.
51 CIA experts.
No, they didn't. No. Nobody told Twitter to censor the New York Post story. They literally leaked the emails where they talk about censoring the story. I don't know why you guys say the intelligence agencies told them to do it.
So all of the mainstream media all ran with this has been debunked, and they all cited the letter that came from the National Security State, which was signed by 51 intel operatives.
They didn't say that it was debunked. They said it looked like Russian misinformation.
Exactly.
Honest,
and so then they started all of their articles with that statement in order to frame it in the exact same way that Nick was saying that every article about Nick is framed by the first sentence being Nicholas J. Fuentes, this, evil things, so that when you read the article, you're pre-framed to believe Nick Fuentes is an evil human, or you're pre-framed to believe that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian misinformation.
It looked like a fishy story. Any honest actor, like I'm pretty sure at this point we all know the laptop story is real, but even looking at it,
it's like a fishy story.
Yeah, obviously.
Everyone in the idea
that Hunter Biden dropped off a laptop years ago to like a blind computer store owner, yeah, that is a sensational story. That sounds like bullshit. It still sounds like bullshit, even if it's true. But again, like the deep state has so much control sometimes, like censoring stories, but it couldn't have prevented the New York Post from publishing it. Why? It couldn't go and like take that hard drive out of Giuliani's.
Because
Giuliani had balls. Oh my God. So it only takes one journalist to shut down the entire, also, by the way, like a quasi-mainstream media journalist. This is the New York Post. It's not like we're talking about, like a small YouTube channel or something, right? So even
the New York that story, and then the entire media narrative had to shift in order to discredit the story as quickly as humanly possible. And the entire national security complex mobilized and got 51 of their top experts, like ex-director of the CIA, ex-director of the NSA, the people that had architected their entire national security state, the people that had lied to us about torture, that had lied to us about WMD.
Yes, I understand. You can talk about things from 20 years ago. That's fine. But
to discredit the story as quickly as possible.
And look who broke it. The most mainstream media people in the world. Giuliani had a copy of the drive. This is a mainstream ex-mayor of New York. And then the New York Post, a mainstream media publication. Giuliani was not mainstream? How old are you?
So let me ask Nicholas.
I want to hear this. Hold on. I want to hear this. You don't think the New York Post counts as mainstream media, and you don't think Giuliani wasn't a mainstream political figure in the United States of America?
New York Post absolutely counts as mainstream media. What I'm saying is that a singular journalist got the scent, got the trail, and decided to write the story. And the New York Post,
but I'm asking, how is that possible? And that was a mainstream media publication. How would that be possible? The CIA and the NSA and the FBI are controlling all these things.
You clearly haven't done a lot of research on how the CIA actually do influence.
And your mic is really bad, but just so what you're saying, Destiny, is that the letter that was signed by Mario. Go ahead, Keith, go ahead.
Saying is that when you actually research how the CIA influences journalists, it's not like journalists are literal robots where the CIA has a literal game controller where they actually like move their mouths. They peddle influence through payoffs or through like promotions or through just making friendships. Like it's not as simple as just saying we literally control everything that everyone says. That's not how the world works.
No,
but
it's not. Hold on, it's easier to censor one story by like contacting a journalist and threatening his family than it would be to falsely get like every single intelligence agency or like 51 different officials on board with censoring a story. It doesn't make sense. It would be way easier to get the one journalist guy like to just like show up at his house and steal the drive.
Experts work for them.
Comey works for them. The DOJ works for them. Why did they pursue the email investigation with Hillary? Why didn't they just kill that immediately? Why did Comey ever make those announcements publicly? It hurt him a lot. Why did this story with the DOJ with the special prosecutor come out with Biden being senile? That hurts him as well. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that they report on themselves on that doesn't make them look good. Is it all plausible deniability?
Dustin, I have a question.
Okay,
I'm curious. Do you believe that in China the state broadcaster can just broadcast whatever it wants and whatever it discovers, or do you believe it has to work within an official narrative from the government?
In China, I think they probably have to work with official narratives from the government. This media probably works with the state.
And what about in Russia?
Yes. For publications like
Saudi?
RT, yes.
Saudi?
I don't know as much about Saudi media, but that would be my assumption. It's a total monarchy, yeah.
Cool. But in the West, not at all, 0%,
well,
right?
It depends on the country you're talking about. Like the BBC gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. PBS gets state funding. I don't think they get state direction. I think in general in the West, I don't think the media tends to operate at the behest of the state. Whereas like in monarchies or dictatorships, you tend to operate more with what the state is telling you to do. Yes.
Well, we could ask why you'd get state funding without state direction. That's one question.
Because of legislation from Congress that authorizes state funding? I mean, it's not really a huge conspiracy.
Of course, yeah. They just give money for nothing. Yeah,
I'm sorry. Do you think the most wealthy broadcasters work for PBS and NPR?
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I want to try and want to try and get to the end of the point, especially because I'm driving. So do you think that would allow a country to be competitive, considering that you need to have narrative control over your populace, and that we now know, and everyone in the West accepts, that China has narrative control over its populace by the state broadcaster, as does Russia, as does Saudi Arabia, as do all these other countries, and that having a news broadcasting apparatus which told the truth, even if it's against national security interests, would not allow you to be competitive as a nation state? Do you think that we're going to allow that to happen just because we care about?
No, because the West doesn't run the world because they dominate the narrative. The West runs the world because they dominate it militarily and economically. People don't like the United States because we've got the most bought and paid for media. They like the United States because we have the strongest navy that guarantees the most free passage through water. Because when the Houthis start firing missiles at people, it's U.S. destroyers that show up and save the waterways. They like the United States because we are a massive trading partner. We have the highest GDP in the world at this point, and we buy and sell goods like crazy. That's why people like us, not because we poison our media, but because we actually put out good results. You can't control the media. You can't media frame the way out of like horrible participation in a world economy. You just have to like actually be able to put up the numbers.
No, I don't think you understood the point I'm asking, because America as a country is in competition with other nation states.
No, but we don't compete on who can control the narrative. That's shit you do on Twitter and YouTube. We compete on who has the highest number of exports. We compete on who can facilitate like the largest like multilateral trade deals. We compete on who can guarantee safe passage through waterways. When people start blowing each other up, whose military is going to show up to make sure that your ships are safe? Those are the things that we compete on.
Cool. Understand. So you think that America has no vested interest in controlling the narratives that its own population believes in, although the CIA spends basically unlimited money ensuring that vested interests are installed in every other nation state around the world, but they don't care about their own at all. They don't care about what Americans think at all. They just care about all the other.
If you think the CIA spends unlimited money, it's because you don't know what unlimited money looks like, and you have no idea what the scale is between like CIA spending and spending of companies like Facebook or Apple or Microsoft or Amazon. Like, if you guys at least were to come on and say things like, I think that all of our foreign policy is being ran by the people that control like Apple and Facebook, that would at least make sense. But by companies that are worth, like tens of billions or like $100 billion? No, absolutely not. And also, no, the reputational hit you would take in a democracy when you elect your leaders and people catch you lying about stuff or fabricating stories or controlling the media. Yeah. No, I don't think you would.
We never called them lying.
Okay.
We never called them lying.
Is this supposed to be a
censor like Obama?
Nobody ever said they never. Nobody ever said
all of this money to influence other populations, but they have no interest at all in influencing the minds of their own populace. No, they just care about trying to influence everybody else's with their democracy and all the garbage they're doing when they're pushing it. And you're saying they don't control the narrative, which is also another rabbit hole.
Technically, your story isn't even contradictory, even if I let you have that, because technically Americans don't really give a fuck what happens in other countries as much as their own. So you could get away with influencing other countries more than your own. Yeah, of course. But the reality is that like, if you get caught doing these lies, you pay huge fucking repercussions for it. Like a lot of the country's politics.
What have they paid for COVID? What have they paid for COVID? What have they paid for the Vietnam War? What have they paid for
the media coverage for the Vietnam War was harmful to U.S. institutions. That's one of the reasons why we left Vietnam. If we controlled the media, we would have stayed in Vietnam until we saw it through. Media pressure was one of the reasons we left. Look at how unpopular the Iraq War became. You don't think Obama wanted to take a more active role in the Middle East? He couldn't, because the American public fucking hates everything in the Middle East after the Iraq War. What are you talking about? Yeah, American public heavily influences our capability of operating in different theaters of war. After Iraq and Afghanistan, we have no appetite for it.
Okay. Is this supposed to be about being unbanned, or is this about the number one fucking news media truster to defend the State Department's agenda? Like, I don't even know what this is about anymore.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. I mean, because I thought the purpose of this space was discussing Nick's censorship. I mean, this is like a civics lecture now from the Krasensteins and Destiny. Like, it's really interesting. People might not realize this, but yeah, Destiny has blacklisted Nick for the last few years to try and stifle his popularity.
What do you mean? Blacklisted? I'll ask.
Hold on.
Ask Keith. Question. Yeah, question to you, Keith. Because I asked Destiny the question earlier. How did he blacklist him? What does that mean?
Why did I blacklist him?
Yeah, so Destiny refused to stream with Nick. He didn't want to help grow his popularity. Nick comes back in a day. He surpasses him on Twitter followers. And Destiny goes back to his old tactic of showing up on a Nick stream and reading Wikipedia articles, trying to make him sound bad to his guests. I mean, the central point here is supposed to be Nick's censorship. And, Destiny makes this point. He's like, oh, well, these people, they defend free speech, but then they don't want to come out and be honest about their beliefs.
This is the easiest truth test forever, right here. Like, tell me, why did I blacklist Nick?
Well, hold on.
You admit it? Can either of you admit it? No, you're going to keep pivoting.
Is he just going to keep interrupting me? I mean, he's been speaking for the last hour and a half, dominating this space.
Make him answer the question.
Yeah, answer the question and then continue, Keith, with the point you're making.
So Destiny says, they get censored, they send them for free speech, and they're scared to come out with their beliefs. Well, he's ignoring the fact that Destiny got his followers to mass report Nick in I think it was 2019-20 to get him banned off Twitch, because Destiny is aware of this double standard that exists for people on the right.
I'll go back, Destiny, I'll go back to you to respond right after. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, Destiny got his followers in the past to mass report Nick, to get him banned, to take away the competition, because he knows this double standard exists. And, Destiny will come on these streams and he'll say, of course I believe in free speech. And in the past he said, well, look, you're going to get censored if you say shit people find offensive. That's just kind of how society works. Like Nick said, Destiny has said, Palestinians, I'm fine with them being genocided. Hassan, who's probably the biggest leftist streamer now, I saw just a couple of weeks ago, he posted the schematic of a weapon as a quote tweet to a politician, suggesting his followers should engage in violence against the politician. Now, there wasn't an SPLC hit piece, there wasn't an ADL hit piece shopped around, because they know there's obviously a double standard that operates here. This isn't some free market where the companies are looking at these individual streamers, these individual personalities, deciding who to work with. I mean, Nick used the perfect example during Bandy ADL. All of these mainstream media outlets rushed to get this out that, of the 10,000 tweets I've made, that they found one that was a joke about being an anti-Semite and self-avowed anti-Semite. I can give her another example. Recently I was censored off a couple of payment processors after a Media Matters hit piece. Media Matters hit piece references an SPLC hit piece that says I'm a Holocaust denier. Now I've literally never made a public statement about the Holocaust in my life, right? It's illegal in most of Europe. But that is shopped around. Leftists send these to payment processors, they send these to platforms.
Did they include sorry to interrupt, did they include a quote or did they just make that statement without any quote, without any?
No. The original article that it goes back to, which is shopped around to all these various outlets now, there's no link, there's no quote. It's just put there by leftist activists. That is used to censor people. And what you realize about censorship is, there's no debate or discussion going around here. These employees get these pieces handed to them by organizations that are supposed to have a reputation like the ADL, the SPLC, and they just hit the button. And, it's easy to come in with this kind of sort of naive, pluralist worldview where we're in this free market of ideas and companies are just acting in their self-interest.
Why did I blacklist Nick?
You blacklisted him to stop his popularity.
Okay, so I blacklisted Nick because I'm a big free speech advocate online, and I have been for, I think, probably like 6 or 7 years.
Did you direct your followers to get Nick banned?
And Nick Fuentes, I haven't tried to get Nick banned in like 7 years. I had a huge conversation with him on Twitch. I was part of the hosting of that conversation. I didn't try to get him banned.
Followers to mass report Nick.
Like 8 years ago. Yeah, my values have changed since then.
It keeps changing.
I haven't changed it. I literally hosted a huge debate with Nick. But the reason why Nick is blacklisted, the reason why I blacklisted Nick is because as of a year ago, Nick and his group of people spam report people. You can go and watch it on the Ralph Retort. You can go and watch it on shows he's on. And he says, well, if people spam report me, I'm going to spam report them, which is ironically why I spam reported conservatives in the 2016-2017 period, because you guys spam reported everybody else too. Even large conservative figures would try to cancel other people. James Wood, the Guardians of the Galaxy dude, got canceled by fucking Cernovich digging up 10-year-old fucking tweets. And Nick Fuentes plays the exact same game. Nick, do you acknowledge that as recently as a year ago, that you had your audience run around and spam report people on YouTube, that you were fighting with Mr. Medicare and other people, and you would encourage people to spam report people? Or are you going to deny that or not even answer it?
Really? Did you do that to Keffels? And to Hassan? Last year?
Why are you pivoting? Wait, do you want to answer that question?
Well, answer.
No, I asked you a question. Nick, you're the freedom of the speech guy. Nick, answer the question.
Keffels and Hassan?
Nick, he won't answer the question. So that's what I mean when I say they won't own their positions. They're
Did you do it to Keffels and Hassan?
He's not going to answer it. And anyway, just to be clear, that's why he's on my blacklist. The reason why he's on my blacklist.
I wouldn't call this censorship, but Destiny, why it hasn't seemed to have worked. Like, if you look at Nick's following now, despite all the censorship, did it help him in your opinion?
It's not about it. It helps them. I just don't like to signal boost people that engage in mass reporting. And Nick's community does that like crazy.
Reporting against Keffels and Hassan.
Notice how he doesn't answer the question? It's because he keeps dodging.
You're just a liar. People can post the clips. Destiny had Keffels and Hassan mass reported last year He had a tenuous explanation. Me and Destiny collaborated.
Every time
a few
Nick
times.
yaps like this without answering my question, it's because he knows he doesn't have an answer to the question.
So let me
Nick is
go.
the one on
Destiny,
here talking about freedom of speech. Make him answer the question. Make him answer the question.
I'll leave it with him. So I think both of you haven't answered the question. But Nick, I'll give you the mic again, you and Keith, because I know Keith was waiting for a long time. Either Keith go on or we'll go to Nick.
Yeah, let me jump in here. So
let him ramble. He means without answering the question.
And now another interruption. The thing is,
oh, good. So Destiny, let's just take a breather, please. Go ahead, Nick. Thanks, Destiny.
Thank you. So the thing is, I mean, I think the big point is I'm banned for 7 years from some platforms, banned from Twitter for 3. I get platformed on here. Mario, you, before you even put out the tweet, say, well, just on the record, I don't agree with most of what he says. We have to bring in 4 left-wing Zionist Jews on the space, and that's not good enough. Then we got to bring in Destiny, who for years has been saying, for whatever stupid reason he can say, well, I'm not going to stream with him, but he is going to show up on this one when it's a big platform. And that just goes to show the disadvantage that people like myself have. You know, Destiny is on YouTube, he's on Reddit, he's on Discord, he's on Twitter. Despite saying equally awful things, jokes or not, he's engaged in mass reporting like anybody has, whether it's a year ago or 7 years ago. But a person like me, I've been banned from everything. I've been lied about by everybody, lied about by the ADL, SPLC. They've never written anything about Destiny. There's no pressure to get him banned from anything. I get restored. It's not 48 hours. I get invited onto a space where everybody practically has to sign a pledge that says, I'm not with this guy. And we got to bring in 4 other people who do most of the talking from the left to defend the State Department and the regime.
You had Andrew Tate
and now I'm going to be
Alex
interrupted
Jones
here. Now I'm
on
going to be
your
interrupted
side.
here.
Yeah, Brian, I'll let you respond right after, Nick. So I think Brian's point was, Nick, that you had a lot of, you had Alex Jones, you had Andrew Tate, you had Sneeko, you had others that were supporting your stance. So I think we tried our best to keep it balanced, but I do have to agree with you. Like, I'll be honest, I faced the most pressure bringing you on stage, more than anyone else except probably Prime Minister Imran Khan in Pakistan and Bolsonaro.
A very clear double standard earlier when you introduced Destiny. He openly says that he hates Islam and he's Islamophobic, and nobody pushes back. There's not going to be any articles. Nobody's going to write a bill to go and say anything about Islamophobia. But then Nick says his points, that he believes that race is real and he thinks that America's a Christian country. And then somehow that's the most banned position. That's the one that's going to get articles written about it. When Myron comes on stream and he makes jokes about, you know, they make Nazi jokes, stuff like this, they automatically try to censor you and say that you believe in this stuff. And they come on here, Destiny says that you must believe in, there must be some sort of secret motive that you have, some secret hatred. But no, these people just, we like to make jokes. We like to have humor. Destiny openly says he hates Islam, and guess what's going to happen? Nothing. He's not.
It's literally it's literally not jokes. 2, I've been banned from Twitter more than any of you motherfuckers. I can't believe you guys are crying on here about Twitter bans. But I'm pretty sure I've been banned from Twitter. I've been banned from Twitter. Yeah, that's great. I got some. I'm banned from Twitch. Right, and I was banned from Twitter for longer than you and fucking Fuentes over here combined. And you guys lie about why you get banned from your platforms anyway. Just like Nick Fuentes won't answer why he's on my blacklist. He also lies about why you got no blacklist.
Let's move away.
Because he was fighting with a flight attendant.
Let's move away from these points. Go ahead, Sneeko. Go ahead.
One more point is that Nick's right. I mean, I hosted a bunch of panels back in 2022 when I first learned about Nick and his movement about America First. And the reason they try to silence him so much is because his position ultimately is that we should stop funding Israel. It's that simple. That's why he's so censored, is because he points out a very specific flaw that American politicians have, is that they all have to have an undying allegiance to Israel, and we don't even know why they're our greatest ally. People defend this country so much and they don't even know where it is on a map. The fact that he calls this out so much, that's what bothers him. And so they try to blacklist him, they try to censor him nonstop. But every time he gets a new angle of popularity, when people start to admit that his talking points have been correct for so long, they immediately hijack the stream. They'll come in there when he comes on Fresh and Fit, Destiny has to debate him. When I go debate XQC, Destiny has to jump in. When Nick gets reinstated on Twitter for the first day and surpasses him in followers in 24 hours, who needs to come in? Can any of you even remember what all the yapping from 30 minutes was about the Wikipedia articles? I can't.
Listen, we all know that you have trouble paying attention. That's why you haven't learned anything about the religion you're grifting in for the past year. But to be clear, Mario invited me. He literally DM'd me like 2 hours ago. So Mario is the Jew in this circumstance. Just to be clear,
you can blame me.
Controlled, by the way.
I'll take the blame. But Keith, I want to ask you a question. You and Brian, now we'll go to Nick for that same question. Why, Keith, in your opinion, was Nick banned from Twitter and all other social media companies? Keith, Brian, and then obviously Nick. You're probably best to answer that question.
Well, it's obviously ideological censorship. I mean, getting back to what I was saying earlier, Destiny can make these pro-genocide statements. Hassan can endorse violence. Nothing happens. They stay up on YouTube. There isn't an SPLC hit piece. There are teams employed by organizations like the ADL that sit and watch every minute of Nick's content. And he does 5 shows a week. So it's like, 10 to 15 hours of content. And they clip out 1 or 2 minutes, often joking clips, and then they shop that around, and that's really the only way he's allowed on these major platforms. Nick, I was with him a few days ago. He was telling me about the extent of the censorship after January 6th, and really, I think it's a watershed him being allowed back on, because people get censored, and we all know how bad the censorship has been the last year. But there was a point where, you get censored on a platform, you move to another platform, maybe that one bans you. But in Nick's case, I think he's one of the few people where it was an individual censored. It was an unpersoning across platforms, where even people that were posting his clips would get censored. If you search for him on YouTube, it was only very curated results from organizations like the SPLC. And it's easy to come on and take this kind of, like I said, this sort of naive pluralist attitude that it's just a free market and these companies just don't like these individual beliefs. But at the end of the day, the companies aren't monitoring these individual streamers, these individual personalities. These boycotts are targeted and led by organizations like the ADL that forced Facebook to ban Holocaust denial, forced Facebook to ban white nationalism, launched a huge advertiser boycott on Twitter. And, this isn't just some kind of organic thing where these organizations represent like a plurality of interests. It's oftentimes the same oligarchs funding these people that are funding the media. Jonathan Greenblatt was in the Obama administration. These organizations are really an extension of the regime. And to take this kind of naive attitude that this is just sort of civil society functioning as it does, and it's free market making decisions about who to sponsor, it's just totally naive. So that's why I think it's such a... That's why I think it's a watershed moment that Nick is back on, because I think he has become the litmus test as someone who is, the most attacked by these organizations, the most lied about. And he's really the only one that's come out the other side of censorship bigger than before. Individuals like Alex Jones have been heavily censored, Andrew Tate, but Nick has really come back bigger than 3-4 years ago. And it's at the point where, despite all the censorship, I think everyone has to recognize he's a part of the public conversation. Piers Morgan regularly name drops him. People mention his meeting with Trump. So, Elon here is making, I think,
let me just, based on what you said, because I think you made a very important point here. And Nick, let me ask you a question based on what Keith said. Obviously, as a side note about Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital, we know Israel did it, and we know Al-Shafa didn't have those. Let me ask Nick
just something came up, just 2 seconds. You remember how, I can't remember who it was, the joke that Nick made earlier, the quote, "You're right, we can't compare loving Hitler to loving Destiny. Destiny is far worse." We just saw just a prominent account snip that and say Nick Fuentes to Mario Nawfal, and then they put that quote there. Without putting out the full context that it's a joke. I think it's a perfect, I think so. Just want to make it clear. Yeah, I just want to make it clear. This is I think it's a bad joke. I think Nick even thinks it's a bad joke. He might disagree. He might think it's a good joke. I think it's a bad joke, but it's a joke nonetheless, whether it's good or bad. I think anyone that snips it, anyone on Twitter that takes that snippet and posts it pretending it's not a joke, is participating in censorship, or at least tarnishing one's image.
Point, right, Mario? Because he's literally saying, you guys are taking my jokes out of context and making it seem like these are my ideological positions. And then we have that happen in real time. So if anything, it just proves his point.
And Mario, you see what didn't go viral? Someone saying, "I hate Islam with every fiber in my body." Nobody clips that, and it does not go viral anywhere. You see the clear hypocrisy, the clear double standard.
Here's the thing. This is perfectly encapsulates what happens with Nick, right? Nick gets censored, and anyone that works with him gets censored as a byproduct of platforming him. That's why most people are pussies and don't platform Nick, because they're scared of getting something like that just happen to them. This literally is quintessentially proves what we've been talking about.
But Nick, can I say
to a degree, and they censor anyone that platforms him, and they try to say.
Sorry, I can't hear Suleiman right now.
No, Myron is speaking. But Nick, can I just say, sorry, Sully, I know I took the mic from you. I'm going to give it back to you. But Nick, can I just kind of put it on you? When you make jokes like this, are you really asking for it?
No, I think that's totally ridiculous. I think that, this is like the person that gets abused by the battered wife. Well, what did you say? Or the rape victim. I'm raped. I've been raped. No, I'm kidding. So that's an edgy joke. But it really is, do we have a free society or don't we? Do we all have the same rights? Can we all make jokes? Can we all use rhetoric? Can we all speak freely? I haven't said a joke that's more offensive than, for example, some people like Lil Nas X dancing on Jesus. If Lil Nas X got killed by like a bunch of Christians because they don't like the blasphemy, would you look at that guy and say, well, he had it coming, that he did that? I mean, or any
Nick,
other.
how many people do you think died
how
many Jews died in the Holocaust?
Okay, am I just going to be interrupted the whole time by this pissant who
you
said
literally
he's going
more than anyone else here.
doesn't want to stream?
How many people?
Two seconds.
Totally ridiculous.
So, Nick, I'll let you finish your point. So then I'll give you the mic because I know I took it from you. Destiny, I appreciate coming on stage and creating this debate. But we'll just take a bit of a break. Nick, I'll let you finish your point. We'll go to Sully, and Destiny will go back to you in a bit.
So no, I think that's totally ridiculous. And I think that, and the other thing is, it's dishonest. And that's to Keith's point and Sneako's point is everybody can watch my stream and discern when I'm joking and when I'm not. Even you did. You who disagree with me on most things can acknowledge that my joke about Destiny being worse than Hitler is clearly a joke. Not for people that clip it and then want to use that to deplatform me. That's precisely what happened the first time. I go on a space, I say something, they clip it, they use it. And as Sneeko said, people like Destiny or Hassan can go on other streams and they can say outrageous things. There's no clips. There's no SPLC researcher. There's no censorship. So it's really a question of, if you're right wing, are you so handicapped that, it's just like Harrison Bergeron. You can't say anything. You're constantly interrupted, constantly the language is policed and so on. So no, I have an edgy sense of humor. And more to it, a lot of people say I'm funnier than comedians. I don't know if I agree with that, but, the point is we live in this climate where that is a substantial thing that's been removed from society. People can't be funny because they can't take risks. People that have more clout or people that are more mainstream than me, people like Shane Gillis as a good example. One of the funniest people around, recognized at this point, gets removed from the conversation because he's got the wrong politics or made the wrong type of a joke. So this, aren't you asking for it, is like an insane totalitarian mindset, in my opinion. And it'd be one thing if I was one of these guys like the Blood Tribe that you see at these protests where they got a vein bulging out of their head and they're screaming, obscenities and racial slurs and that, that might be one thing. I don't know, in terms of free speech, but I could understand why that people might be put off by that. But obvious jokes about things where everybody's laughing, or even if I'm just laughing, I think we can recognize that's part of the conversation. The bigger picture is who is behind the censorship. It's not that I didn't get kicked off Twitter because there was a grassroots, organic mass support because they didn't like my jokes or they didn't find it humorous. I got banned from Twitter because there are groups, as Keith said, that since the time I was 18 years old have effectively been spying on me, watching everything, paid for it with the stated intention. That's their goal of getting me censored because of the political things that I say. And that that's the case. As Keith said, that you can't believe the alibi or the cover story because of the inconsistency. They don't do this to left-wing people. They don't enforce it against left-wing people because it's a matter of ideological censorship. If it was about the thing in itself, Hassan would be banned for posting a bomb schematic, obviously. And there are numerous other examples. Even regular conservatives can point this out. So,
nobody denies everything double standard.
Nick, just a quick question. Nick, just a quick question, right? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you've explained from a social media perspective, right? And even people have mentioned about this, your joke being taken out of context and clipped. What about from the mainstream media perspective and organizations such as ADL? If those organizations are up in arms about what they believe is hate speech, why is it, for example, they've come after you, they've made hit pieces against you, the ADL have come after you, but like, for example, not to mention Destiny again, but his extreme Islamophobia has been left unanswered. So and does that then not, that's the first part, and the second part of the question, does that then not add more merit to your argument that there are certain people who are having control of the media, having control of the narrative?
100%. And I'll even match you another example. Ben Shapiro, who's, I think, far more famous than almost anyone here except for probably Andrew Tate. Ben Shapiro, 20 years ago, was writing that Israel should ethnically cleanse Palestine. He wrote actually several articles saying transfer is not a dirty word and these people hate us and we got to ethically cleanse them. Now, whenever you read an article about Ben Shapiro, you don't read Ben Shapiro, who 20 years ago in a town hall article wrote in favor of ethnic cleansing. That's not part of the conversation, but it is the case with me. It is the case with Keith. It is the case, presumably, if other people on the space step out of bounds, they'll say, Mario and Suleiman, who hosted the white nationalists, Nick Fuentes. That proves that it is ideological and it is about power. And I'll say the Ben Shapiro example is connected to Destiny. You may have noticed that lately Destiny has been getting bigger platforms. He was on a debate with Ben Shapiro, with Lex Fridman, with Jordan Peterson. And, this is a theory, so not a fact, but a theory. I think that one of the reasons they're willing to overlook some of the disturbing things about his life or disturbing things that he said, but not with me, is because Destiny is one of the few pro-Israel leftists. So Jordan Peterson recently, who's at Daily Wire, Shapiro's company, somebody said, when will you talk to Nick Fuentes? Peterson said, when hell freezes over. Okay? And I'm a Catholic, right-wing guy. I mean, obviously far right, obviously not mainstream right. But when hell freezes over, that's when he'll sit with me or converse with me. And presumably in an extremely hostile way, if it ever happened. When Destiny, who lives a completely, and I don't say this as a personal attack, but lives a not conservative lifestyle, to put it respectfully, with some decorum, okay, somebody who really is a fundamental liberal on the issue of transsexuals or on climate or other things, well, Jordan Peterson smiles and sits with him in a friendly manner, and it's an intense debate, but in a very friendly way. Why is it that even conservatives will platform liberals, communists, in some cases Satanists, porn stars? Trent Horn sat down with porn stars or whatever. He's a Catholic apologist. He's also Jewish. They'll sit down with porn stars. Those people are not offensive enough to a conservative to refuse their company. But I am, because I made a joke or I said something, even I'll grant you, let's say something that is completely heterodox in the conservative political space. That tells you what's going on. And as I said earlier, the contours of what is called political correctness, what explains these things, is the positions that people take on certain issues. Dave Rubin, as the last example I'll give, the last example is Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin built, and we all recognize, built his brand saying, I'm a liberal and I may not agree with you, but at least we can have a conversation. Rubin Report, back in 2016, he was debating Shapiro and Milo and Peterson. He really put all these people on. He's part of the intellectual dork web. Dave Rubin, he literally published a book. Hey, don't burn this book. You might disagree with my book, but don't burn it. But when people go and criticize Israel, then Dave Rubin blocks you on Twitter, attacks you on Twitter, and calls your boss and tries to get you fired. All of a sudden, he wants to burn the books. Now we can't have a conversation. There are some things that we can't talk about.
Why isn't Hassan banned? Why isn't Hassan banned? He's the largest political streamer on Twitch and has huge platforms on other, huge things on other platforms. Why isn't Hassan banned, who is insanely anti-Israel?
Hassan isn't platformed by Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson.
He's platformed by Twitch, which is represented by Amazon, which is it's got to be the most Jew-controlled fucking organization in the world. Why doesn't Hassan get banned? He's had ADL.
I'm not talking about platforms.
You said that if you don't represent, so you don't think the ADL or any of the platform bans have to do with not towing the Israeli line?
Try getting it out. I'm talking specifically about Shapiro and Peterson.
Yeah, because you're talking specifically about it now because it contradicts your point. You're yapping for 3 minutes. You won't own any point.
After you held the floor for an hour.
I haven't held the floor for anything. You interrupted me so many times. You're so
what is the point?
Oh my God.
Nick, I'm gonna, George, you've heard Nick's joke earlier and I saw one of your comments, you weren't too happy with it. Do you think jokes like this, do you think anything that Nick said so far should be censored? I know you disagree with a lot of it, but do you think it should be censored, George? Mr. Santos?
I don't think he's added.
Well, look, I'm no fan of Nick Fuentes.
So why isn't Hassan banned for being anti-Israel?
Hold on, Desi, hold on, please. Go ahead, Mr. Santos, go ahead.
So Desi, real quick.
I'm still a listener. First of all, the reason is because he's still alive.
No, sorry, Sneeko. Yeah, I think there's a glitch. You can't hear George Santos speaking right now. Yeah, Sneeko. So George Santos speaking.
I'll drop and come back up.
No, not you, George. I'll drop Sneeko and bring him back up. All good, George. The glitch was Sneeko. Go ahead, George. Sneeko, I'll drop you and bring you back up.
So very simple. To answer your question is, I don't agree with anything Nick Fuentes says. I used to think he was, harmless and he's out there, whatever. But I don't think he should be banned. But I don't think we should give him oxygen because he says a lot of hateful things.
Is someone talking? I can't hear.
Yeah, it's me. Let me.
Okay, George, I think you're the issue, but it's actually, yeah. I'll drop you and bring you back up, but it's actually, Brian, I'm going to give you the mic. You'll probably make a similar point to George, hopefully, and I'll bring George back up.
Yeah. So I've heard some people talk, and I think Sneeko might have said something that like Nick's been banned on all these platforms because he's been anti-Israel or he has spoken out against Israel. But I feel that there's a lot of minimizing of what Nick has said in the past, and he claims that it's a joke. You say like, oh, you joke around a lot, but like, were you joking when you said that you loved Hitler, or when you said that Jews have no place in Western civilization, or when you called for the Aryan race to go to victory? Like, were they all jokes?
Total Aryan victory, yeah, that's a joke. And loving Hitler, I do love Hitler in a Christian way. I love everybody.
Let's
As I
go.
said, I love you.
You don't see why that might be a
Destiny.
problem. You don't see why that might be a problem, and that might be a little bit different.
Well, but tell me why. But tell me why. Why is that a problproblematic statement? To
would you love?
Am I obligated to hate people?
So would you say, so Nick, would you hate? Is there anyone on this planet that you would hate? Just first question. I know it's very broad.
No,
nobody at all.
As Christians, we have to love. Well, and this is the purpose of saying. And this is the thing I think that's getting lost. The purpose of saying something outrageous like that. People say, "Why would you say something like that?" It is to elicit a conversation like this. It is for people to say and question their assumptions. Why is it the case that we have to hate a person? Why? Who can we hate? Who can we love? And who says? And why? Wait. So hang on. Me as a Christian, when you say things like, well, you said Jews have no place in Western civilization. I don't know what that specific quote is, but what I am saying is that Jews are not part of the same civilization in the sense that for thousands of years, they were segregated from Christians.
Do you think Muslims are part of the same civilization? Should Muslims be allowed to run for office?
Hold on, Destiny, let me go. Yes, so Destiny, just let me get
question.
Yeah, let me Destiny, I will go back to you, I promise. Nick, I want to back and forth between you and Brian on Brian's particular point before going to Mr. Santos again. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, me too. And I'll make it brief, but a statement like that is Jews are different than Christians, and they have lived in segregation or in conflict or in other ways with each other because they're not Christian. It is a Christian value that we say we love everybody. We love even our enemies. We love everybody. Jewish people say sometimes I think there was an article written in First Things recently by some Zionists, and they said, actually, there's a virtue in hatred. There's a virtue in hating the Palestinians or hating Hamas and things like that. And so that does reflect a fundamental difference of values. And when I say, and Christians believe that evil is the Antichrist, the essence of good and God and love is selflessness. The opposite of that is selfishness, pride. So our adversary is not actually Hitler, it's the devil. It's the Antichrist. And the model of good is God. It seems like there's this parallel, separate moral system that's been created where in some people's minds, Hitler is the devil. And I guess Israel is the angel or something. Like that seems to be the people that are the most evil are the ones that are the most like Hitler. And the goodest people, the best people, the most good, well, they're the ones that are the least racist, the least this. I think that's like an obfuscation. I think that obfuscates the fundamental moral equation for Christians. So when I say, and when me and Ye said that,
I do want to go to let me get Brian to push back. So let me
go ahead. Right? It's going to be a one-word answer. Based on what you said, because you're basically applying Christian ethics. But let's say hypothetically someone was to kill your family member, would you apply the same standard that you would dislike the person but still love them?
Absolutely. We're supposed to love everybody. That's why that priest in Australia who got stabbed immediately prayed for the attacker. So that is really the fundamental difference.
And that's the difference. That's the reason Hassanabi gets to go on the mainstream platforms, is because he doesn't have that sort of basis of ideology. When you come from the atheist point of view, they don't see you as a threat. Nick coming on here and saying that America should hold Christian values, that's the real threat to the Judeo-Christian system. Mario, there's a reason why Elon Musk is not, I love Elon Musk for reinstating me. The reason that he's not in this space right now is because we're talking about the Israel issue, the one issue that scares him the most. They're not supposed to speak about this. Look, the biggest lobby in America is not funded by the Chi-Coms or the globalists. The biggest lobby in America, APAC, 98% of their politicians are funded by Israel. This is the main issue. This is what it always leads back to. And the biggest threat is having strong people like the Groypers that believe in God.
And also, I want to add this as well. Not only do they siphon off Nick's influence, but anyone that works with
Are we
him.
going to get George Santos in here?
Yeah. So let me get Brian.
Quick point. I just want
quick, please, Myron. I want to go to Brian then Mr. Santos.
I'm going to be very quick here. The thing I want to mention is that not only do they stifle Nick's influence, but they go ahead and try to stifle anyone that platforms him that isn't diametrically opposed.
No, Myron is speaking. Yeah, Myron, you've got the glitch. I'll bring you down and back up, and no one can hear you on stage. You go ahead, Brian, and then we'll go to Mr. Santos.
I just feel that you're trying to whitewash, no pun intended, like some of the things you've said in the past. So I'll ask you flat out. I'm Jewish. I've had family members fight in World War II, in Vietnam. Do I belong in Western civilization?
I think that Jewish civilization is different than Christian civilization. I mean,
but do I belong in the United States? Do I belong in Western civilization as a Jew?
I mean, if I were in charge, I wouldn't deport you or something like that. I don't, those are subjective questions.
But you think I should have no power in this country?
I think you shouldn't be able to be the president. Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Because I'll tell you exactly why. One, you're not a Christian. And I think that any Christian cannot just throw it up and say, we're going to let the president. Fathers. Okay, well, first of all, that's not true. Okay, that's based on a myth. No. They were Christian, and it was a Christian people. And the framers, if you read in the Federalist Papers, it says that this is for one people of one faith on one land. John Jay, Federalist number 2. Look it up. It's in there. The framers all believe this. Regardless,
show me where they say it's a Christian country.
But leaving that aside,
show me where they say it's a Christian country. Does it actually say that somewhere in the Constitution?
I just cited it. John Jay, Federalist number 2. John Jay, the Federalist Papers were written by the framers, and that was the basis of the Constitution.
And it said that nobody that's not Christian should have no vote.
It didn't say that. No, it didn't say that explicitly. But it said that this is a country.
What are you basing it
on? And also, okay, are you going to interrupt me, or do you want me to make my point?
I'm just trying to get to your thought process.
Okay. Well, regardless, even if the Founding Fathers were not Christian, that doesn't matter to me. Okay. The Founding Fathers are not the authority. God is the authority. And no Christian can say that we're going to let the country be run by whoever gets elected. Like, let's say atheists get elected, or let's say Muslims get elected, or let's say Satanists get elected. A Christian cannot say, well, the Founding Fathers said, or, so-and-so said that the people decided that we must live under some kind of regime. No, we believe that actually society should be receiving instruction from the church, that only moral people can lead, and that if you have people in charge that do not believe in God and don't actually follow God's laws, then you're going to have a country that's totally immoral or amoral and therefore totally sinful and offensive to God. I don't know how anyone could be a Christian and not
Wait, make him answer the question of would you apply the same restrictions to Muslims as you would to Jews?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. I literally just said it.
Jews.
I said we shouldn't let a Muslim be president.
Yeah, you said president. So what about for Congress? What about for mayors?
Yeah, for Congress too. I said it earlier.
So no federal officers,
judges,
no state officers for
just Christians.
No Muslims as well. Okay.
Just Christians.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
So